I've got an amazing guest this hour as well, Sara Davison. You may have seen her on TV. She is a divorce coach, and she's coming on this hour to talk about empowering women who have left their marriage or maybe thinking about leaving their marriage and ending it, because we hear a lot of the time all the negative side, don't we, to the end of relationships, the end of marriages. We hear about stats and statistics and all the bad things, you know, what it does to children, what it does to everybody. But we don't ever hear how sometimes it can be the best thing that a woman can do for themselves if they're very unhappy. And we don't hear about the life after that either. So we're going to be talking to her on the Girls' Night In show, BBC Radio Nottingham, 18 minutes past 8. Happy Friday. How are you doing? I hope you've had a lovely week. I hope you're kicking back right now with a glass of wine, enjoying the music and enjoying the conversation. My next guest, I'm very excited about talking about this topic. She's a multi-award-winning coach, twice best-selling author and podcaster as well, and a very highly respected divorce coach. It is Sara Davison. Hello.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, good evening. Well, thank you for agreeing to come on the show because, do you know, this idea of talking about this is inspired by two of my friends. We'll call them C and D because I'm not going to say their names, but who are just doing incredible things right now. One of them's just recently been divorced and the other is separated, and I think it's going to go down that path. And they're both amazing women. And I wanted to talk about this topic because it has such negativity to it. And I feel that women have such a hard time. And sometimes, a lot of the time, stay in unhappy marriages because they feel so worried about how they're going to be seen by everybody else and society, and how we treat women when they have come out of a marriage as well. You're an empowerment coach. You know, you are changing this and turning it into the positive, aren't you?
Absolutely, because I think the stigma now has to go. I think it's very old-fashioned, and I think it's time that we realise that sometimes relationships come to an end, and sometimes that's for the best. Staying in a relationship as we used to, you know, as maybe our grandparents and before them used to just stay because that was the done thing, just isn't how society works anymore. We live in a highly disposable society where if we don't like something, we change it. Now, again, getting into a marriage takes a long time. We don't want to rush into a divorce because, as you know, it's known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through in life after death of a loved one. So it's definitely not something to rush into because it can be traumatic, but it's also a chance to redesign your life just the way you want it, to sort of jump off that married treadmill, if you like, of getting up, going to work, dropping the kids off, whatever your daily routine is. We get to take a breath, jump off that treadmill and really think, what do I want more of in my life? What do I want less of? And so actually it can be a golden opportunity, and if the relationship wasn't right, then it's the best thing to let it go and move on.
The thing is as well that I feel that when you do get married, often, even in the healthiest of marriages, it's happened to me in mine, you know, and I'm very happy, but you do lose yourself a little bit, whether you have children or not, because you kind of morph into one, and it's very easy to lose your identity, your freedom, what sort of makes you happy as a singular person on your own can disappear. And that is quite frightening, really.
Yeah, and we see this all the time, you know, especially the longer the marriage, the more common this is. So, and it is really normal. It's human nature. You want to please your partner if it's a healthy relationship. So you're going to make compromises. And some of those compromises, you know, can be sacrifices in some cases. But, you know, compromises are healthy. You know, if you prefer an Indian takeout and they prefer a Chinese, you might find you get more Chinese or watching more action movies and rom-coms. That's okay, you know, but when you start to lose a sense of self, and, you know, that can happen often long periods of time, or even when you have children, when you just go into being mum and being wife and you sort of lose you as an identity, as you're saying, that can be challenging. And that's where the fun comes, I guess, afterwards, when we really try and tap into that with clients and work out, you know, who are they now? I have a funny story because when I came out of my divorce, I thought, right, I'm going to go back and do what I used to do, you know, pick up my hobbies. And one of them was rollerblading. So I got my rollerblades out. This is like 10 years on. And I took myself to Hyde Park in London because that's where I've seen people doing this. And I thought, right, and I got myself an instructor. But unfortunately, he fired me after the third lesson.
Oh, no!
I was just too scared to let go of him because being a mom and a single mom now, I didn't want to get hurt. And so I had to reassess that hobby that I used to do was not for me now. So it can be quite an interesting rediscovery journey.
I love that you did that though, and that you tried that. You know, those things that scare you that we go back to. I think, you know, that's incredible, because that adrenaline is so important, isn't it, really? And challenging ourselves as well. And again, when you're wrapped up in a relationship, you can stop doing that.
Yeah, it's important to get your sparkle back. That's what I call it. It's like getting your sparkle back. And it could be just small little things. It doesn't need to be something massive, and definitely doesn't have to be dangerous. But, you know, something that you enjoy doing that maybe you didn't do that much in your relationship. So I often, you know, challenge my clients to create their breakup bucket list, which is everything they can do now that they maybe didn't get the chance to or maybe couldn't do in their relationship. And that could be, you know, spending time with friends maybe they lost touch with because maybe they didn't really get on that well with their ex. Or it could be, you know, finding a new hobby or learning a new skill. So, you know, getting your sparkle back really does help you to get the momentum to move on and let go of the past and start being happy with who you are now.
I'm loving this. There's so much to cover, Sara, and we'd like to keep you here and come back to you shortly and talk a little bit more about this and how women can turn their life around after divorce as well. And that whole idea of not answering to anyone, getting back out there on the dating scene as well. I think there's so much to discuss. So we will come back to you shortly in a few songs' time, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. We are talking divorce this hour, but the positive sides of it, empowering women, giving them that encouragement, that strength to leave the unhappy marriage that they're in and know that there is so much out there afterwards. Life still goes on and can be so much better, can't it, Sara Davison?
Yes, it can. Yes, it can.
So Sara's a divorce coach doing amazing work with people all around the world. And you have these Heartbreak to Happiness meetings. You were telling me about these. They're a bit like AA, but you have them online and people can join, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I've been looking at for a while because there's a lot of support for, you know, the AA meetings are well known and obviously help a lot of people. But if you're going through a breakup, which is pretty much everyone on the planet from probably above the age of 15 now, maybe 16, all the way up to, you know, much later on in life, you know, there's no real tailored support. So I created some online support groups. We meet on Mondays, it's online. And yeah, I mean, it's just a support group where you can share your stories, know that you're not alone, because often our friends get a bit fed up of hearing the story, especially after 6-7 months, maybe longer. So it's nice to have other people you can talk to. Plus, there's coaches online like me and coaches I've trained so that they can give you advice and support as well to help you moving forward. And it's working so well. It's a real community of support for people.
When women do come to you and they have left their marriage or they're thinking about leaving it and going through a divorce, what would you say are probably the sort of top things that come through that they're worried about the most?
Being on their own. Never being loved again. I think that's got to be up there. It's very daunting, isn't it? You come out of a relationship and especially if your partner's left you, maybe they've left you for somebody else. But even if they haven't, I think it really does knock our confidence. And that's normal. That's, you know, a human reaction to the breakup. So again, that can be one of the biggest issues, that they'll never find somebody else again. They'll never be loved. And that the fear of that can be quite paralyzing. And also it can be quite scary. And I've heard a lot of clients over the years say, you know, I'm never going to trust anyone again. I'm never going to trust anyone not to do this again. So I'm never going to date again. In fact, I'm off dating completely. And I think that's really interesting because whilst it's normal, it's a self-preservation coping mechanism to protect ourselves from this happening again. It's so awful. It's so painful. Why would you put yourself out there? But I think the interesting thing with trust, Kelly, it's not about trusting somebody else. It's not about meeting somebody new and saying, here's my trust and take it and let's see what you do with it. It's actually learning to trust yourself to make the better decisions about who you're going to get into a relationship with. And I think that's the work that's so important after a breakup, learning what you want. I think we all pretty much know what our type is and what we're physically attracted to. but what do you need? And that is very different. Quite often that's overlooked, especially on dating apps where we're judging by what we see. What do we need? Do we need someone who is emotionally intelligent or reliable or honest or fun? What is it that you want from a partner? And I think that's the work that's so essential after a breakup, to make sure that you learn the lessons that maybe were contributing factors to why the relationship didn't work, and then bank them. Because life has a funny way, doesn't it, of keep repeating the same lessons until we actually learn them and go, okay, I've got it. So that's really important work, and I think that's essential after a breakup.
I love all what you're saying there. I think it's spot on. I think everyone listening can completely relate to that. You know, whether it's even when you're younger and you're dating people, and, you know, I know for me, God, I had terrible taste and always went after people that needed fixing and people, bad guys, you know, until I met my husband, who was just the complete opposite, you know. And so, yeah, you do. It's these lessons that we learn. Something I'd like to talk to you about as well is the box that we kind of put women in as well, this 2.4 thing. You know, it's very much, you know, marriage and children. And if you don't have that, there's something wrong with you. You know, why aren't you married? Why aren't you in this situation? And my daughter's 8, and I often chat to her and say, you know, you just know that you can do anything. So as you grow older, as long as you can do everything for yourself, you'll never need anybody, a guy, to do anything. And that's really, really important, because I don't want her to feel that way, that, you know, it's very old fashioned. I feel marriage is becoming less of a thing nowadays, actually, and I don't think it's such a bad thing, you know, that we have these choices where we don't have to fit into that box anymore if we don't want to.
Absolutely. I think, you know, nowadays the marriage rate is actually decreasing in the UK. So the only category that has been increasing in is, interestingly, the silver splitters. So that's at 50 years and above, right? Which I think is really interesting, because traditionally they were the ones who, when they got divorced, it was kind of blue rinse or slippers and that was it. Your life was over. Whereas now there's a whole industry that caters to, you know, dating in your 50s and 60s, and there's a lot more activity, and you're expected to go on and date again. So it's interesting that the marriage rate is going up in that category, but nowhere else. And I think you're right. The pressure that we had growing up was the fairy tale that you hear and read every day as a child, and, you know, you grow up and you marry your prince and everything works out. And again, that's not real life. And I think there's been a huge shift to female empowerment about, you know, you decide if you want to get married, absolutely. But if you choose not to, that's okay too. I guess the challenge is when we're in our 30s, I think women are under more pressure, because obviously if we want to have children, then that's when we feel the pressure and the clock's ticking. So I think sometimes, and I see this with clients, that they rush in at that point to get attached to someone, get into a relationship, get married so that they can have the children, because they actually really want that. But maybe they're making that decision in haste, and maybe because that person is there and the timing works, rather than the relationship is based on what it needs to be fulfilling.
I love what you're doing, Sara. I really do. Thank you so much for talking to us on the Girls' Night In show. I could just have you on all evening. If people want to find you on socials, where do they go?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on all social, but Sara Davison Divorce Coach, or my website, saradavison.com. Thanks, Kay. I really appreciate it. It's been great fun chatting to you.
So do we. You're amazing. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.